Morning glory, Amy Grace, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt, live in Studio West. Good Tuesday afternoon to you. There's a lot going on in the world, and I'm going to cover it all. The resumption of the war in Gaza by Israel, the threats of the Houthis, the launch allegedly of missiles by the Houthis at Israel. It appears to me that President Trump's getting ready to hammer Iran. President Trump talked to Putin today. We've got Judge Bosley and the deportees. We've got the impeachment conversation with the Chief Justice. We've got a lot to go on, but I want to tell you about something I did this morning. Now, the background of this is I never, ever go to listen to interviews. I do interviews. And so I don't like to go to interviews. I go to speeches, I go to concerts, I go to sporting events. Don't go to interviews because I'm pretty good at this. I stopped counting at 25,000 interviews. That doesn't count phone calls. I've just done tens of thousands of interviews. And El Rushbo paid me the ultimate compliment to President Trump. I wasn't at the lunch, but I was told by the third party there that I'm the best in the business at this. So I kind of take it seriously. I like a good interview. I watch them. If I don't like them, I turn them off, but I don't go to them. It takes a lot of time. But this morning, I drove down to Newport Beach, California to hear an interview because the greatest of all time was being interviewed, Jack Nicklaus. And he was being interviewed by my friend Hank Adler, who's a co-author of mine. Wrote a book on the fair tax fantasy with Hank a decade and a half ago. The only person I've ever co-written a book with, but Hank's an accountant. He's a professor at Chapman, and he's a golfer, and he's raised a lot of money for years. There's a picture, if you're watching on the Salem News Channel, of Jack Nicklaus winning the Masters in 1986. But can we show the picture of the event, Harley? I want to show a picture of Hank and Jack Nicklaus. So I'm down there, and Jack Nicklaus is 85 years old. And Hank's 10 years older than me, but he's not 85. I didn't know what to expect. Jack Nicklaus was fabulous. I mean, what a professional. And Hank, I went up to Hank's wife, who I've known for a long time. I said, please tell Hank, as a professional, he did a wonderful job. Because the temptation for people who don't do this for a living is to step on stories and to rush and not to allow their guest the opportunity to talk and to stop their guest when they're pausing to build up to a point. None of that happened. It was a perfect interview. Now, this is a fundraiser for Hoag Hospital System down in Newport Beach. And it's a Balboa Bay Club, very famous place where lots of Los Angeles used to sail, and I think Humphrey Bogart sailed out of the Balboa Bay Club. I'm not sure. Famous place, though. I did not know, Jack Nicklaus is from Columbus. He's a Buckeye. He's like Urban Meyer. He's one of those Buckeyes who's legendary all over among every Buckeye. So I'd go just because it was Jack Nicklaus, but he also happens to be the greatest golfer ever lived. There aren't many people about whom you can say declaratively, that's the guy. That's the GOAT. 18 major championships. By the way, he's also one of the greatest golf course designers in history. He's designed 425 golf courses. And I knew he was a good guy. Everyone has always told me that, but I've never heard him in person. I don't watch golfing interviews because they get too much into the golf and not enough into the person. He's been married 65 years to his wife, Barbara. I believe he's got, 24 great-grandchildren. He's got some tragedy in his life. He lost a grandson to drowning. He talked a little bit about that. His big charity, he lives in Miami now, is the Nicklaus Children's Hospital, for which they've raised $210 million over 20 years. Hey, you big tech billionaires, there's a place to give a lot of money to because they take care of a lot of people. Barbara is well known for being a saint in Ohio. I'm sure if Coach Urban is listening to this, he knows him. I had known that Woody Hayes was a friend of his dad. I knew that Woody Hayes had to be restrained when the first Arnie and Jack showdown, I think at Thunderbird was the tournament, that Woody was walking around with Nicklaus Sr. and Arnie's Army was heckling the young kid from Ohio State. I did not know that he learned to play. I love this story. This is the kind of story I love. I am a terrible golfer. I'm a great caddy. So I played a lot of golf as a kid, but I caddied more. And I know what it's like to be, Jack Nicklaus talked about walking through a stranger's backyard at 7 o'clock in the morning or 7:30 in the morning every day, all summer long, to go tee off before 8, because junior golfers are allowed to tee off before 8 and after 4. And so he always did the same shortcut. I did that, and hitting a bucket of balls. And if you belong to a country club, the bucket of balls is not free. They send your dad a bill. So his dad said he was a pretty good all-around athlete. He played baseball, football, basketball. But golfing, he could control. It was up to him. Didn't depend on his teammates, so he decided he was going to be a golfer. So Jack Grout was his pro. I've never heard this before. And Jack Grout, they do a group lesson for kids. It's common everywhere. And he hits the ball well, and Jack Grout takes an interest in him. So you should hit some more balls. So Jack Nicklaus starts hitting balls when he's 10 or 12 years old. His dad gets the monthly bill for a bucket of balls at 35 cents a bucket. $380. He'd hit 1,000 buckets of ball in a month. All right, that's kind of an indication that he's serious about it. Day after he turned pro, he'd won the U.S. Amateur a couple of times. He's the Golden Bear coming out of Ohio. Everybody in Ohio knows about Jack Nicklaus. We all love Jack Nicklaus. He's like St. Jack and St. Urban and St. LeBron. There are people for whom you just have enormous respect because they're Buckeyes. And he got a letter the day after he turned pro from Bobby Jones down in Atlanta. I got a friend, Glenn, who used to practice at the firm where Bobby Jones was a partner. And Bobby Jones said, I'm sorry you're turning amateur. I was kind of hoping you'd do what I did. But by the way, I have a relationship with Spalding. He was getting sold by Bobby Jones to sponsor it with Spalding. That was pretty funny. He talked about playing Firestone. He talked about playing with people whose names you won't know. Sam Snead, Byron Nelson, Julius Barros, kids, guys who were old men when I was growing up, I'd watch. And he talked about the concession, which is a famous thing, with Tony Jacklin at the Ryder Cup. Tony Jacklin was the British Open champion, and Jack picks up his coin. Jack, we're showing a little video here from YouTube. Jack drains his putt, and then the Ryder Cup is tied. And Tony Jacklin has a putt to make. And Jack Nicklaus realizes if he misses that putt, the British press will never let him alone. So that's called the concession. And it's a very famous moment in golf, if you love golf. And then he talked about building the memorial. And the memorial is his golf course in Columbus. And how he wanted to give something back to Columbus because Columbus gave so much to him. He's a real Buckeye. He's dotted the I on the Buckeye. And so it was just a fabulous thing. And it's so rare to run into a person who is authentically everything you want them to be, authentically a great, super champion who talked with love and dignity about Gary Player and Arnie Palmer. He said those three were such buddies that when one of them had a bad round, they knew for sure that their two buddies would be there waiting for them outside their locker to say, hey, you had a pretty good round today, didn't you? That was the way they went about the game. And he talked about being, Hank Adler asked him a great question. You're known as being a gentleman. So well, my dad taught me when you lose, you go up to the man that you lost to, shake his hand, look him in the eye, and said, you were the better player today. Congratulations. You can go kick a locker later if you want, but don't ever be clueless or classless. And he talked about Barbara, his wife, like every husband should talk about every spouse. It's just amazing. And he talked about winning the Masters in 1986, why he wore a yellow shirt. I had missed this. He wore a yellow shirt because of a young man named Craig who died of sarcoma. They became friends with, and Craig always told him to wear a yellow shirt for good luck, and he found it on that day. He started out 8th on the board. Masters was coming up in April. Whenever they start playing March Madness, I start looking forward to the Masters. I'm not a big college hoops guy. I watch the Final Four, but I don't watch the 64 and the 32 and the 16. But I do watch the Masters every year. Said if he could play one round of golf, he'd play Pebble Beach. Talked about embarrassing himself in front of Bing Crosby. He told stories. This is what I really credit Hank with doing. He told stories that people wanted to hear. It's like playing your greatest hits at a concert. John Andrazik of Five for Fighting told me, you don't go to a Five for Fighting concert and not play Superman in 100 years. That's what the crowd wants to hear. So he told some old stories. But man, I hadn't heard the Masters story before from Jack Nicklaus. So I had a treat this morning. I just want to say, amid all this war and trouble, amid all these woes and terrible things, there are still some genuine professionals who do things the right way and he was there to raise money for a hospital. Jack Nicklaus doesn't need anyone's applause. He talked about how he raised $210,000, $2,100,000 by auctioning off 3 rounds of golf. He didn't say where it was going to be, but he said, we're going to play at Lost Tree. You'll love Lost Tree. It was Augusta. And he took 3 groups of people, $700,000 a group, to raise $2.1 million for the Nicklaus children family. This is a guy who's a good man. And there are a lot of bad people in the world. You run into a good man who also happens to be the greatest at what he ever did, that's a good morning.